Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into our daily quiz. Before we start with our today's practice questions, we have an announcement. BYJU'S IAS will be launching Target Prelims 2022 crash course, which is scheduled to be conducted from 5th of April and it will go up to 24th of May 2022. What is that you have to do? You have to follow the link given in the description box, download our application where this program, which is static plus the current affairs, is only available on our application. So what is that you have to do? Download the BYJU'S Exam Prep application where you would be able to view this crash course. This is in addition to the crash course that we run on the YouTube. So what is so unique about this particular crash course? We will have the static part, we will also have the current affairs, and what we will have is a 50-day revision program. Students will be provided with a daily revision plan, time-bound revision of the current affairs, and daily mock tests to test where you stand in this preparation. Now let's get started and look into the first question. With respect to near field communication, which of the following statements are correct? It is a contactless communication technology based on radio frequency. NFC allows secure data exchange by using encryption. It requires a distance of 1 meter or less to initiate a connection. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 1 and 2 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to the NFC technology. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. Whenever you want to shop, most of us love shopping, right? And whenever we want to eat, we go out to the restaurants or you go into the petrol pump to also fill in the fuel for your vehicle. What does the vendor ask? The vendor in all these cases might ask you, sir, do you have Wi-Fi on your card? So this is not Wi-Fi, but instead it is NFC. So what does NFC do? NFC is nothing but near field communication. How does this work? The minute you take out your debit or the credit card, if it has the NFC chip, it will be able to communicate with the machine. So you either tap on the machine or you keep it close by to the machine. So remember, it is not Wi-Fi, but instead it is near field communication. So if you look into the option, yes, it is a contactless communication technology based on the radio frequency. So the NFC is a technology that enables two devices to exchange the data within a close proximity. What does it make use of? It makes use of the electronic radio field, and both these devices will contain the NFC chip so that the transaction happens at a short distance. So the first statement is right. When we look into the second statement, NFC allows secure data by using encryption. This is also the right statement. Whenever we make use of NFC, what is the advantage? Let's say if you are making use of some of the other technologies, there can be a possibility that a person might hack the data, eavesdrop into the communication. But when it comes to the NFC, what is an added advantage? The person will have to be only in the close proximity. So when you're making use of the NFC, what do? You give your card and the person either taps or keeps it close by to the machine. So even if that particular hacker wants to hack the information, he cannot do it. Why? Because this requires close proximity with the machine. So the card or the mobile, if it is continuing with the NFC technology, it requires close proximity. So the second statement is right. When you look into the third statement, it requires a distance of 1 meter or less to initiate a connection. This is a wrong statement. Why? Because it is not 1 meter, but it is only few centimeters. It means that whenever your card or the phone is communicating with the vendor's machine, it has to be in close proximity, either in inches or in centimeters. It cannot be 1 meter. If there is 1 meter distance, the communication may not work. So the third statement is wrong. That is because it is few inches or centimeters and not 1 meter. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements. The president and the governor can pardon sentences inflicted by court-martial. The Supreme Court is authorized to grant in its discretion special leave to appeal from any judgment in any matter passed by any court or tribunal in the court except military tribunal and court-martial. Which of the statements given above are correct? The answer to this is 2 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to the court martial. Let us try and understand what is this court martial all about. Whenever there is a trial, what happens in a trial? It is a proceeding that happens in a normal court of law where the accused would be present, then there would also be victim as well, then you would also have the prosecution, you would also have the defense where they argue with respect to this case, and ultimately the court of law delivers the judgment. What if it involves the military personnel? What if it involves people from army, navy or air force? In such cases where the trial is conducted is called as a military court, or it is called as a court martial. So if it is the civilians, it will happen in the normal civilian court, but if it's the personnel who are from the military, navy or air force, it basically happens in a military court, which is called as the court martial. So the military court can award punishment for its people when it comes to the military law. So if there are these people, the military personnel who violate the military laws of that particular country, they can be tried in these court martial or the military courts, and ultimately they can be imposed with penalty. Now if you look into the first option, the president and the governor can pardon sentences inflicted by the court martial. This statement is wrong. Why is it wrong? That is because yes, the president has the power, but the governor does not have this power. So it is only the president who has this power given under Article 72, where he can pardon sentences inflicted by the court martial. So the first statement is wrong because that power is not given to the governor. When you look into the second statement, yes, the second statement is right, which means that under Article 136 of the Indian Constitution, the Supreme Court is authorized to grant its discretion special leave to appeal from any judgment in any matter passed by any court or tribunal, but this does not include military tribunal and the court martial. So second statement is right according to Article 136 of the Indian Constitution. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following are the double landlocked countries? Liechtenstein, Mongolia, South Sudan, Switzerland, Uzbekistan. The answer to this is 1 and 5 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu speaks about South Sudan, which happens to be one of the landlocked country. Now the question is, what is this double landlocked country? When we speak about landlocked countries, these are the countries which do not have a coastal border, which means if you take the example of Afghanistan or you take the example of Uzbekistan, it does not have the sea or the ocean in and around its border. So basically, if it is a landlocked country, this country, if it has to reach one of the seas or the ocean, it has to pass through another national boundary. So basically, if we are speaking about Afghanistan, it has to pass through Pakistan. So it means it has to pass through one of the countries to reach the coastline. But when we speak about double landlocked countries, it basically means that this particular country, to reach the sea or the ocean, will have to pass through two countries. In case of Uzbekistan, it has to pass through Afghanistan and Pakistan, and similarly in case of Liechtenstein, there are two countries which it has to pass through to ultimately reach the sea or the ocean. When it comes to the global countries, we have only two countries, one in the form of Liechtenstein, the other in the form of Uzbekistan, which are the double landlocked countries. The other countries of South Sudan and Switzerland are landlocked. So this article here is speaking about the landlocked countries. As part of the assignment, you have to put on the comment section which are the landlocked countries in Asia, Africa and Europe. Please put them on the comment section. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements with respect to COMEX. COMEX is the primary futures and options market for trading metals such as gold. COMEX itself does not supply precious metals. Which of the statements given above are correct? The answer to this is both. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to the COMEX gold. So what is this COMEX? COMEX here stands for the commodity exchange. This happens to be the main exchange for silver and gold futures, which was first founded in 1933 through the merger of four smaller exchanges based in New York: the National Metal Exchange, the Rubber Exchange of New York, the National Raw Silk Exchange and the New York Hide Exchange. So basically, if we are speaking about this commodity exchange, this happens in United States of America, with respect to the commodities market. And in India, we have the commodities market in the form of MCX. MCX stands for Multi Commodity Exchange. It happens to be one of the India's biggest commodity exchange, and here the prices are quoted in rupees, and when it comes to the COMEX, the prices are in terms of dollar. So the trade in COMEX happens in dollar, and since MCX is part of India, this is where the trade is quoted in rupees. India also has other national commodities exchange. Which are these other national commodity exchange? Please put them on the comment section. Now, if we look into the options, yes, the first statement is right. COMEX is the primary futures and options market for trading metals such as gold in United States of America. And then COMEX itself does not supply the precious metals, which means to say that the supply of these metals is made by the seller, which happens as per the rules of the conduct of the contract, and the COMEX itself does not supply the precious metals. So both the statements are right, and the answer to this would be both. Now let's look into the next practice question. The term ACE2 is talked about in the context of genes introduced in the genetically modified plants, development of India's own satellite navigation system, radio collars for the wildlife trafficking, spread of viral disease. The answer to this is spread of viral disease. What does ACE2 stands for? It stands for angiotensin converting enzyme 2. So this enzyme has been viewed where its involvement is present in the coronavirus biology, and it is also involved in the SARS-CoV-2 infection. This happens to be a previous year question from the year 2021. Now let's look into the fact of the day. The fact of the day for today's discussion is reforming death penalty. Why are we discussing this topic? In the last few years, what we have witnessed is the lower courts and the high courts in India have been imposing death penalty. This, according to the Supreme Court, they feel they are not following certain procedures. They might have been imposing these death penalties on people with some sort of errors. So in order to overcome this, in order to make sure that there is a procedure laid by the Supreme Court, what we have is the reforming death penalty system, which will be introduced in the Supreme Court in the near future, considering number of errors conducted by the lower courts as well as the high court. So what are we looking at? We are looking at a system where death penalty is being imposed by the lower courts and the high courts. They are not able to rectify the errors for the imposition of the capital punishment, and ultimately, because it is the people who are bound to suffer, the Supreme Court in the near future may come up with a procedure to impose the death penalty, which has to be followed by the lower courts as well as the high courts. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. When it comes to the constitutionality of the death penalty or the capital punishment, is the capital punishment constitutional? Yes, it is constitutional. The Supreme Court in number of landmark judgments has clearly emphasized when it comes to the constitutionality of the death penalty, it is right. Why? That is because we have Article 21. Article 21 speaks about right to life. So number of petitioners in the past had asked the Supreme Court that article speaks about right to life, but at the same time you're also snatching away the life of the person. This means it is violating Article 21. So what has the Supreme Court said? The Supreme Court has clearly said that when it comes to Article 21, what we are giving is a chance to this particular accused to fight in the court of law. Only after it is proved in the court of law is when a person's life can be snatched away. So we are giving him ample amount of time to prove to the court of law that he has not committed such an offense. So we are giving him time. We are following the natural justice principles. So Article 21 is not violated. So the Supreme Court in number of landmark judgments, and it has also re-emphasized in the Bachchan Singh case as well, that when it comes to the death penalty or the capital punishment, it is constitutionally right. In the same Bachchan Singh judgment, the Supreme Court also came up with the rarest of the rare doctrine. However, the Supreme Court in the Bachchan Singh case came up with the rarest of the rare doctrine. When you consider the rarest of the rare doctrine, you have to consider two important parameters. Why is that the Supreme Court or the High Court or the lower court is considering death penalty? When we look at the CRPC, which is the procedural law in the country, whenever there is a person committing a heinous offense, by default he has to be imposed with the life imprisonment. if life imprisonment is not given and death penalty has to be given to that particular person, what are the special reasons why death penalty is being imposed? This has to be clarified by the Supreme Court, High Court or the lower courts. Added to it, they also have to consider the aggravating circumstances and the mitigating circumstances. What do we mean by aggravating circumstances? Whether that particular case is heinous in nature, was it a cold-blooded murder, was it planned, and does it involve the SC/ST community, the women or the child, or is it a type of a scenario where large number of people are killed? So if this involves, this is called as the aggravating circumstance, and the court should also consider mitigating circumstance as well. What is this mitigating circumstance? It is not a cold-blooded murder, it wasn't pre-planned, it happened instantaneously in the heat of the moment, it did not happen on a planned preposition. In all these cases, whether that particular person is poor, did it happen because of any other circumstance, all this will have to be considered as the mitigating circumstance. So what the Law Commission of India says? The Law Commission of India in its 262nd report has clearly said that when it comes to the lower courts and the high courts, they have been making use of the rarest of the rare doctrine, and some of them may not have looked into the mitigating circumstance. In fact, when you look into the landmark judgments of Santa Singh in 1976 and the Mohammed Mannan case of 2019, all of these judgments clearly pointed out that the lower courts and the high courts, in fact the Supreme Court, will have to look at the mitigating circumstances. Give this particular person life imprisonment, and if you cannot give life imprisonment, you feel that there will be travesty of justice to the victim only in the rare cases with special occurrences where you also consider the mitigating and aggravating circumstances, only then you are supposed to impose death penalty. But in most of the cases, the mitigating circumstances are not considered by the High Court as well as the lower courts. This is where the Supreme Court says that in all these landmark judgments, lawyers are present, but these lawyers do not have the experience to look at the mitigating circumstances. Ideally, they have to look at the mitigating circumstance. This requires a special knowledge as well. So this article says that the American Bar Association 2003 guidelines for the appointment and performance of defense counsel in death penalty recognizes the role of mitigation specialist with a clearly defined role that goes beyond what lawyers can do. Yes, lawyers can help the court of law ultimately make sure whether that particular person is convicted or released or acquitted, but in few cases where mitigating circumstances have to be brought before the court of law, the lawyers are not the experts. So the court is also considering making use of the mitigation specialist, where he would go to that particular person's accused house and try to see what are the mitigating circumstances. Did it really happen instantaneously, or was it planned? Was he really poor, or it was planted in such a way that a narrative is created by the parties? So basically all of this will have to be taken into picture. So this article says in most of the lower courts as well as in the high courts, the mitigating circumstances are not taken into picture, where ideally they should have been taken into picture. So going forward, the Supreme Court is looking at reforming the death penalty or the capital punishment, where they will clearly lay out a procedure, and this procedure will have to be followed by the high court as well as the lower court. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.